We move on now as tensions in West Asia are escalating sharply after Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels claimed responsibility for a missile strike near Israel's Ben Gurion airport. The Houthis, in their latest statement, have now vowed to launch more missile strikes on Israel's airports. The Houthis said that they would impose a comprehensive aerial blockade on Israel by repeatedly targeting its airports. Let's listen in to what a Houthi spokesperson has had to say.
العظيم ردا على التصعيد الإسرائيلي بقرار توسيع العمليات العدوانية على غزة، تعلن القوات المسلحة اليمنية أنها ستعمل على فرض حصار جوي شامل على العدو الإسرائيلي من خلال تكرار استهداف المطارات، وعلى رأسها مطار اللد المسمى إسرائيليا مطار بن غوريون.
The rebels have issued a warning to international airlines, urging them to cancel all flights to Israel, particularly Ben Gurion. The missile, which struck just outside Israel's main airport, caused injuries and widespread panic. Some international carriers have already suspended flights to Tel Aviv. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded swiftly, blaming the Houthis and their Iranian backers in a fiery statement. He said Israel would retaliate against both the Houthis and Iran. Let's listen in to Benjamin Netanyahu.
We will take very strong action against them, and we always remember that they act with their patron Iran's direction and support. We will do what we need to do to take care of our security, to respond effectively, and to give Iran a due warning that this cannot.
Meanwhile, according to the Houthi Health Ministry, the United States and the United Kingdom have carried out joint airstrikes on Houthi positions. Reportedly, 15 people are said to have been injured in the strikes around Yemen's capital, Sana'a. Iran has firmly denied playing any role in the missile attack on Ben Gurion airport. Its foreign ministry said the action was an independent decision by the Houthis in solidarity with Gaza, and warned that any retaliatory action against Iranian territory by Israel or the United States would have consequences. Well, joining us to discuss these latest developments in the Middle East is Adnan Nasser, an A News correspondent who's joining us from Beirut in Lebanon. Adnan, thank you ever so much for being here. Let's first look at these comments by the Houthis in Yemen, saying that a campaign against Israeli airports aiming to blockade Israeli airspace will be starting. How significant is this, and what response might be seen?
Well, the statement in itself is significant, and it follows a significant moment in the Houthis' attacks on Israel, because the Israelis have been receiving more and more advanced equipment from the United States that were designed to prevent these sort of attacks from succeeding. And of course, the U.S. is more than likely going to support Israel, not just politically or in rhetoric, but with military action, as the U.S. has been doing really since the inception of the Houthis' attacks on Israel, which is only happening because Israel is continuing its military campaign in Gaza. So the longer the Israelis don't find a political solution to their conflict in Gaza, the more we're going to see Houthi strikes into Israel, or at least attempted strikes into Israel.
Yes, Adnan, of course, the wider regional tensions is something we will continue to discuss on this programme as well. But looking at this strike, this coordinated joint strike by the United Kingdom and the United States, we know that there was a similar one on the 29th of April. Of course, US strikes on Yemen Houthi rebels have been continuing since March the 15th. What significance is there that the UK are now involved, and now that they're striking not just once but for a second time?
Well, they're going to keep being involved until there's a regional solution. I mean, the UK, everyone is involved to some degree, because this is affecting the global trade. I mean, prices of ordinary goods or even high-tech goods are going to increase because of the Houthi blockade, or what they want to do is prevent more ships that they believe are aligned with the Israelis. They're preventing them from going through. They want to show that they have solidarity with the Palestinians. So the longer the Houthis keep up their own military actions in the Red Sea, the more likely we're going to see increased membership of, let's say, even other NATO members like the UK, as you mentioned, join in this fight.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I want to focus attentions on that Israeli response. I really want to hone in on what Benjamin Netanyahu might do and how might military action in Yemen increase, not just following, of course, this announcement from the Houthis, but there was a missile that got through in Tel Aviv at the most popular airport in Israel. There must be a big response coming from Benjamin Netanyahu. What do you think that will be?
Look, more than likely we'll see potential airstrikes from the Israelis themselves. I'm sure the United States, there might be a possibility the U.S. would tell the Israelis, don't do this while we're having negotiations with Iran. The Israelis, of course, are going to, I mean, I can't tell what the Israelis will do. It's not for me to make that decision, but obviously it's open-ended and every option is on the table. And keep something in mind. Prime Minister Netanyahu mentioned Iran. I think that he will try to use this recent Houthi strike into Tel Aviv Ben Gurion Airport as a chance of scuttling the Iran-U.S. nuclear talks. I mean, this is something that he wants to prevent from happening. He doesn't want to see a new deal that would potentially not just end the sanctions on Iran, but potentially improve relations with the U.S. and Iran. That's not something that he wants to see.
Yes, Adnan, I'm glad that you brought that up. Of course, Iran denying any involvement in this strike on the Ben Gurion airport, saying it was an isolated attack from the Houthis. Is there a fear that not just Iran will be brought into this, but the wider region? Of course, you're joining us from Beirut, and we know that there has been military action between Israel and Lebanon in recent months. How much is this really on a knife edge?
Well, not really. There hasn't really been any military confrontation between the Israelis and the Lebanese. What we're seeing is Israel hitting Lebanon arbitrarily when it chooses to do so and how it sees fit. Only over a week ago, the Israelis hit southern Beirut, claiming that they hit a building that was harboring or housing, rather, precision-guided missiles. And there hasn't really been any retaliation on the part of the Lebanese. The opposite, we're seeing the opposite from the Lebanese side. They want to use diplomacy to hone in the Israelis to prevent them from doing this even further. And they're calling on international powers, particularly the United States and France, to pressure the Israelis to stop their strikes and to respect the conditions of the ceasefire that was brokered in November last year.
Yes, Adnan, absolutely. Of course, I do want to correct myself there. Of course, Israel's action within Lebanon, but also focusing on Hezbollah as well. Let's now move back to Yemen, and I want to look at the impact of these strikes. Of course, action from the United States, action from the United Kingdom, expected action potentially coming from Israel. While the Houthis, of course, control parts of the country, there are also civilians involved in this. What is the current situation for civilians living in Yemen?
I think it's the worst it's ever been because there's just been no chance of seeing a political solution. There were times in the last few years, at least before the conflict in Gaza broke out, that we're going to see some sort of negotiated settlement. As relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran were cooling and getting better, there was hope that it was going to have a ripple effect across the region, especially in a place like Yemen, which is already, it's been the poorest Arab country. It's the poorest Arab country out of all the Arab countries. So it's unfortunately, I don't see it getting any better unless, ironically, if we see a deal between the U.S. and Iran on the nuclear topic, you will see a higher chance of peace taking place in Yemen and the rest of the region.
Adnan Nasser, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing